Okay, so now that you've identified a business that you think you want to buy, the next phase is the due diligence process. This is when you're going to actually look into the business and see whether or not it's something you want to pursue. Due diligence is the term that's given to the exploration of the business itself. It's doing all of the things to uncover whatever the problems might be. It was Mark O. Haraldson who wrote in one of his early newsletters back in the early 80s, late 70s even, that his money was made in the due diligence process rather than the deal itself. And I think there's a lot of truth for that. I think there's some truth in that for the deals I've done as well. And so the more digging you can do into the business and every facet of the business and the customers and so forth, the better off you are. Over the years, I've developed a due diligence process list of all of the questions I want to look into. And it's become kind of proprietary to me, but it's now over 300 questions. And you can find those lists pretty much everywhere. You can find a good due diligence list and then build your own over time. It'll have things that you might find important that you want to look into that somebody else may not think is that important. And your due diligence, what you're looking for is you're looking for the future trend of the business, and you want to discover in more depth why the seller is selling now and why the business has had the limitations it's had. What you want to uncover is where your opportunity really lies. So the due diligence process can tell you when there's untapped opportunity in a business or when it could be about to hit a brick wall. And that's very important to discover. You want to know whether or not that business is really dead on arrival. In my very, very early days, I invested in a vinyl record pressing plant. So, I was young. I didn't know what I was doing, but my boat business was just starting to make money. And some friends from college said, "Hey, we want to buy a record pressing plant." And I went, "Okay, I'll help out." And so don't do stuff like that, right? Because I didn't do any due diligence at all, and we all know what happened to vinyl records at the time. So I could have done a little bit more homework. I just wanted to support friends, and you might be in that situation too. So when you're doing due diligence, what you're trying to uncover is where the industry lies, not just within its own competitive circle. So for instance, if you've identified a business and it has competitors in the area, that's not the big circle. I'll give you a good example. So Sears, its competitors were Kmart and all of these others, but its real competitor on the bigger rings around it were Amazon, right? Think about where Sears was in the 1970s. It was the analog version of Amazon. That catalog was incredibly thick. It's crazy how big that book was, and it covered anything you could think of buying. It was very much like what Amazon is today. But where is Sears now? Sears is gone. It never saw Amazon as being the competitive threat that it was. It certainly could have done something about it way, way back when, but it never did. And so when you're thinking about your business and you're thinking about what are those competitive threats in your due diligence process, it may not just be the competitors that are around you. It might be that bigger ring. It might be what Amazon is doing. It might be what the community is doing. It might be what the city is doing. It might be what the state is doing. It might be what the country is doing. But you get the point, is that you want to look at other factors that are much bigger that could impact the business either positively or negatively, and make note of that as you go forward. When I acquired controlling interest in Open Interface North America, it was with a simple belief. I believed in the engineering team, and I also believed that Bluetooth was going to go someplace. And so that was really the basis in which I went forward and did the deal to acquire a controlling interest in the company. And so you might be in a similar situation where you see an opportunity and you think that the market is going to be there. I had friends at Microsoft and other places who were giving me information about where Bluetooth was going, and they didn't see it at all heading south as some of the press was claiming at the time. I attended CES, I did my homework, and so I had some understanding of what the market was doing, even though I did not come from tech in that type at the time. And so to me, it just was a bet I was willing to take. And you might be in the same situation where you see something and you think, wow, this could really be an outstanding company. And then you decide to pursue it and you dive on it. So that's all fine. You can do that. But the type of due diligence you want to do is you want to do a little bit of research on the seller. You want to do research on the people they've done business with, on the customers. You want to look at such factors as customer mix and customer concentration. Is all of the business centered around one customer? I looked at a business 2 summers ago where 100% of the business came from one customer. And there was no way I was going to go near that business. That relationship could go south any day and that business would immediately go under. There wasn't even time to build anything else. So avoid those businesses that are reliant on just that one customer, regardless of how good the contract looks. You need to have other options, another place to sell should they go under. And so, or try to go with a different supplier. There's, of course, exceptions to that. As there are exceptions to almost everything in business. This is why it's hard. Even as I'm writing a book right now for entrepreneurship, it's extremely hard to talk in terms of absolutes because business isn't about absolutes. In fact, that's in part why I love it so much, is that there are so many variables. And keep that in mind as you're doing your due diligence process. That some of the things that could impact the business are some of the most benign things you could possibly imagine. It might be successful, for instance, because it has a killer lease in a killer location, and that lease could go away. Then what would happen to the business if it moved? Would it be able to survive? Might not be able to survive because that's the location it needs to be. And so you need to discover all of those kinds of things. But the kind of due diligence that is often overlooked is due diligence about the character of the seller and the people that are a part of the business. What I mean by that is too often I get a call or I talk to somebody who's acquired a company and then they find out that the seller wasn't on the up and up. They may have hid things about the business. They may have been deceptive in some way. I know of a lender right now who was very deceived in a deal in terms of what the potential was for the business. It just wasn't there anywhere near the scale that they had claimed. And so there's lots of ways in which due diligence can fail you if you don't do your careful homework. And in that particular case, I'd recommended to the individual long before they made the investment that they hire a team to do the due diligence process and go through it because they would have concluded that the business wasn't as sound as the seller was claiming. And so you want to find those circumstances and dig deep into the character of that seller. One of the things you want to know is the seller good for their word, because it doesn't matter what the contract says. If you have a dishonest seller, they'll still find a way to get around the contract and do something to you. So you want to know what the character of the seller is, and this is a forewarning to you folks who are selling your business. If you're of weak character and you've screwed people, good luck, because that's going to come up in the due diligence process. It's karma coming back to get you. So you want to be up and up in your dealings, and you want to find a seller who's up and up in theirs. Ideally, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but if they were the kind of person that would do a deal on a handshake and stick with it, that's the type of character you want. I'm not recommending that you just do a handshake and be done. I'm recommending that you find somebody with pretty solid character when they're selling. The other thing that matters is the reputation of the business and whether or not you're buying something that's already in bad shape reputation-wise. That's hard to turn around. You see these signs on restaurants, under new management. And that doesn't necessarily help them, right? Because once you've had a bad meal there, just because a sign says under new management doesn't make me want to go back. That may be the same with you, and that may be the same regardless of what the business is. I've had companies where I've done some due diligence and I've called some customers. They want nothing to do with that business anymore. The relationship is bad, and they don't even want to talk about it. I came across that most recently when I was working with somebody who had invested heavily, and I was doing due diligence on their behalf. And everybody I talked to had bad things to say about the CEO of the company, just across the board, just not a person of their word, lied to them, on and on. It wasn't great. And so you're going to find situations like that where people aren't going to say good things, and you want to know that ahead of time. Now, we did one clever thing once where a seller was making all kinds of claims about the business and the status that it was in and the condition of the software they were advancing. And so we were working on behalf of somebody who was going to buy control of the company and advance it. And we did a very clever thing where we went on LinkedIn and we looked for every former employee in the company. And we then mapped out their start and departure dates, and we put it all on a chart, and we found these clusters of events that occurred within the organization around these dates. So all we had to do was then just contact a few of those employees around those dates and ask what happened, why they left at that particular time. And it unfolded this whole story that nobody had ever disclosed anywhere. Also, it meant that the LinkedIn work status of people did not at all match HR records, and they had been purged of all of these people who may have had negative things to say about the company. And so this is where the sleuthing, the investigation of due diligence is kind of fun, and it uncovers all kinds of stuff. Needless to say, that investor didn't go forward with that deal as a result of the research that we did, because it showed a CEO who couldn't possibly execute on anything. They never had. It was a history of all of these false starts. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for those deals where it says, nope, this is not something you want to pursue. At the same time, you'll sometimes uncover some real gems. I got to know Open Interface a year before I made the deal, so it was a little bit unfair. And I just thought that the engineering team was pretty marvelous. And that's what I was betting on. I was betting that this team, should we be up against a wall, should we have no ability to pursue what we were, that this engineering team, if I could still make payroll somehow, would still invent something really remarkable. And that was why I did that deal. So you're going to find situations like that where when you're doing due diligence, you'll come up with all kinds of little surprises, and they're fun. That's that's the beauty of it. Okay, so once you've completed your due diligence, and then it's time to think about what it is you're going to do before you close the deal. What I mean by think about what you're going to do, from that due diligence process, you put together a plan of what you're going to do with the company once you close the deal. What changes you're going to make, what impact those changes are going to make, how that's going to be materialized at the bottom line, and what it's going to do for profitability, or if you have to raise money, what it's going to do for the raise. And you're going to map all of those things out before you get any further, because what you might do is when you're getting into the math, you might discover that the business isn't really all that great, and that the upside potential just isn't as solid as they were leading you to believe, or that you discovered it to be, that it would take so much money to put into the company just to move the needle a little bit that it's just not worth it. So you want to be ready to walk away from those deals. Now, if you're just buying a small company like a restaurant, or it's a hardware store or some type of shop, you're going to look at things like EBITDA. You're going to look at just how the rhythm of business works and just kind of how customers roll through. That's a little bit different evaluation. And then you're going to look at some of the economic factors, but you're still going to do that exercise of what you're going to do with the business once you acquire it. Are you going to spruce it up? I was just driving down Highway 101 out here in Washington State. It rains a lot, right? So I was driving from just south of Port Townsend, took the ferry across, just thought I'd go for a drive. And I'm heading south on 101, and business after business, as you get along that stretch where it rains a lot, had mossy signs, right? They're in business, but they hadn't gone out and cleaned off the sign. And so I'm thinking, how hard is it to keep your business looking good? How hard is it for you to go out there and pressure wash the thing, get the moss off of it, and make it look like you give a about your business? And so, when I see business owners operating like that, one, I think those are the ones that have potential, because it doesn't take a lot of work to make your business look good. And, clean the door. I've said this on the very first video. These restaurants that just, I don't know what it is. Why can't they clean the door and just make the place look presentable? It doesn't take a lot. And so these aren't massive expenditures to do, but spruce the place up. Yeah, I know it rains a lot and you probably have to go out there and scrape the moss off all the time, but do it. Do those little things that show the consumer, the customer, that you care. And I'm forever amazed by these small businesses. Oh, I don't know why no one's walking in the door. And you drive by those places. Well, for one, you look like you're out of business. You don't even look like you're open. You don't look like you give a shit. Why should I stop there? And so, you'll go by some of these businesses and they look like they're having fun. They look like a great place to stop. I think of that gas station here in Wallingford. You can look up Wallingford signs, I think is what it comes up under. And it has all the funny sayings in the sign, and they just keep putting them up and keep putting them up. Makes you want to stop there. How hard is that? It doesn't cost them much. It's a little bit of time to go out there and change the reader board and put something funny up. But it makes you memorable, and people start looking for your sign. There's all kinds of things like that you could do in order to improve your business, but people don't do it. I'm just absolutely amazed when they don't do it. Now, I get it. You might be depressed. You may not care anymore, but again, that's opportunity. That's the opportunity for you to buy that business. And so those are the owners that you want to talk to and you want to kind of uncover, hey, why is this business in the condition it's in? And if there's opportunity, now if they say, well, business is slow and I can't seem to make it work and I'm just trying to keep expenses down, then what you have to do is do the logical thing and figure out why business is slow and whether or not there's any way to improve it. There could be stats concerning traffic that goes by. There could be other businesses that are impacting. You'd want to talk to some other business owners and see what they're doing. And then look for somebody who's successful in the neighborhood. Look at what they're doing. If their restaurant is doing well and this one is all moss covered and looking like then that tells you it's just that owner. The restaurant down the street has built a solid following. What is it? Is it the personality of the person? What is it that's made it such a big success? And so you're going to want to look for those things to kind of measure whether or not what reality is. It's the fact that the restaurant's just in the middle of nowhere and there just aren't enough people there to support it. Or, what are the other factors that are around it that just kind of make it not a great place to do business? That whole stretch of 101 is very economically depressed, so that would lead me to believe that it's not a great place to locate any business of any kind. I have a hunch that it was either logging or the Bolt decision that happened in the 70s or something that occurred along that area that just decimated that particular stretch of the economy. So you want to find that out and see where business might be going and why it's going away. And those are just some of the things that you want to explore some more. But that process is by itself, like I said, a lot of fun. And it's a great way to figure out what it is you want to do next too. Because sometimes in the journey you'll discover that, no, this isn't the business I want to pursue, that it just doesn't have all of the things that I think are necessary for the company to be a great business. Now, there's another thing you have to consider, and this is an important one. Whether you're running a very small company, let's say it's a tiny clothing store. I know this from my own mother who ran a boutique. My mother had this boutique for a very long time. And as she ran the boutique, she worked like a dog. She would be open at the store 6 days a week from opening to shutdown, and then she'd come home and do payroll and payables and all of the other stuff that she had to do. And she just worked like a dog all of those years. Well, the amount of time that it takes to run a small business versus a large business are the same. So don't get this idea that, oh, I'm going to buy this little business and it won't take up a lot of my time and it'll be easy. It takes just as much time to run a small company as it does a big one. And so a big one, when you have more employees, you can delegate, you can do things to kind of free yourself up. If you're growing with your business, you're not going to have everybody directly report to you. And we're going to talk about some of those things about growing your business for those of you that are tuning in to grow your business. And we'll cover that in great detail. And so, but anyhow, so don't get this idea that, hey, I'm going to buy this tiny little business and it's going to be easy. Most businesses that you're building take a tremendous amount of time to get it to the next level, and you have to make that commitment. Now, there's another thing. I'll talk to owners and they'll say things to me like, well, I just want the business to stay this size. I don't want it to get any too. Now, the problem there is that you might think you're okay as a small company. And you might think, 5%, 10% growth year over year is just fine. What you don't know is whether or not every competitor around you is growing at 20%, 30%, and they're just kicking it. And pretty soon you're going to be out of business. So don't get this idea that just because you're holding your own, that you're somehow safe, that every year things just by themselves mean that you're going to be able to just go on forever. Business doesn't work that way. You see these companies all the time that have been in business for decades, and they suddenly go under because the market changed, they weren't paying attention to competition. God knows what the reason. So this idea that you can buy a business and kind of keep it going in that particular size, that's a bit of a fallacy. So the way I would approach any business, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're going to go into a retail business, I would think about, okay, when I get to X point, I'm going to open a second store, or I'm going to, whatever it is you're going to do to expand that business. And the reason I say that is it's one of the best barriers to competition, and it helps ensure your survival. Don't think about, I don't have the skills to manage all these people. Develop the skills. Learn how to do it. Bring in consultants. Talk to people who have done it. Hire people who have done it. And bring that talent in to continue to make it happy. Keep reinvesting in that business so that it can grow and so that it can have a future. Don't feel like you have to take every dime out all the time. And so when I see businesses do that, they say, we're going to bonus each other out at the end of the year and we're going to scrape out every dime of the company. I think that's just stupidity. That's just flat stupid. You want to keep enough money in the business to keep it growing. And you want to have those reserves in case something goes badly wrong. But to just strip out money out of the company every year is just a dumb idea. And when I see people doing it, I think, wow, they're just never going to go anywhere as a company. And often they don't. They just kind of sit there and putter along, and then competition slowly eats at them. And the next thing you know, they're the one in trouble. And so I strongly recommend that you think about a path to grow the business. It'll be fun. And when I say fun, it's fun if you make it fun. You don't have to be sitting there going, oh my God, I have this business and all these employees, and this sucks. Well, if it sucks, it's because you hired the wrong people. So it's your own fault. Hire the right people in the first place. Don't go cheap. I know of one client that we had who hired the cheapest people he could find. And of course, he had the worst employees on the planet. And so he was constantly talking about how bad things were at his business. And I kept thinking, well, it's your own fault. You hired too cheap. You hired just people who are virtually unemployable elsewhere. So you get what you pay for. So put some time and energy into the people you hire. But we're going to talk about growth in more detail at a different time. This one was really supposed to be about that due diligence process and that plan to grow the business if you acquire it. Also, find an attorney who's not crazy expensive to do your agreement and to help get things off the ground right. There are great small firms out there who aren't going to charge you $500 an hour to do the work. Look for those firms that can grow with you, that will be loyal to you, get to know you, and do a great job of kind of meeting your needs, and stick with them. And if they invest in you and they help you with a cut rate, reinvest back in them and stick with them. I've known too many law firms that have grown and become big, stodgy monsters that shove services at you that you don't need and then do a terrible job. There was one law firm that I worked with for a very long time, and recommended them to a client, and all they did was charge very large bills, made a lot of mistakes, and stirred the place up. And so never again. And so you're going to have those situations. I much prefer the smaller firms. I much prefer the lawyers that have a good working relationship with you and are easy to reach and turn out quality work. So I'd recommend going in that direction versus the big firms. I'm going to keep it there today. we'll create another one of these. I'm recording a bunch of these, and so please come back. Please hit the subscribe button. It means a lot to me if you do that. You can also follow me on Tom and Entrepreneurship on Quora. You can post your questions there for others. You can post some questions here. You can also find me on tomnault.com, as well as Middlerock Partners, middlerock.com. And on Middlerock, you can attend our Zoom calls. They're free, and anybody can attend, and it gives you an opportunity to ask questions. We have different topics. We put our calendar up. You can find it on our website, on Middlerock's website. And so there's lots and lots of ways to interact with us, and we'll do everything we can to help you out. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, thank you. Bye.